Good evening YouTube, this is Will and I'm going to be talking to you today about Black Sabbath. As you might see, this is my first ever video on what I'm about to do. I'm going to be talking to you about Black Sabbath. I'm going to be talking about more specifically about the albums. Now most people who are on here talking about the albums of Black Sabbath, or indeed any artist, usually run through them either in their sort of least favourite to the most favourite, ranking them in some sort of order, giving their thoughts, giving their opinions. And while I'll give my thoughts and opinions on all the albums and try and give you a bit of background history on each album, which will certainly once we get past the original lineup with Black Sabbath will come a bit more into play. I'm going to be doing them in chronological order instead. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I'm trying to do it a bit different basically. I'm going to be doing over 3 videos. The first one will be this 1970s period, the second video will be 1980s, and the third video will be 1990s through to when the band ended in 2016. Simply because the ratioing of the albums, once you get past the 70s and the 80s, doesn't really fit into the decades in the same way, particularly once we get past 1995's Forbidden rather. Okay, right then, like I said, this is my first ever video, so please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, not just on what my opinions of each album, but also feel free to give me any tips on how I can do this better, because while I'm not trying to become the next big YouTuber, I still want to do this for you guys to enjoy it. This is not just going to be solely about Black Sabbath either. This channel, it's going to be about any albums I'm going to come across. I might start doing individual albums, talking about that specific one. It could be a case of what I've been listening to that week. I might do some other discographies as well, and see ones in my record collection where I've got the complete set. Which there are a couple others. Say a couple of others we can do. Okay, right then. Well, let's get straight into it then. So, Black Sabbath, as I might have mentioned, is my favourite band of all time. They're the one that just kind of sat with me the most. Me as being a guitar player, the riffing on all the albums by Black Sabbath will always stick with me, and they were so influential and quintessential to me progressing as a guitar player, even though I've now gone more down a bluesy kind of route with my playing. Listening to those albums, listening to those riffs and trying to figure them out were very important to me growing up. So let's start at the very beginning. So like I said, video 1 is the 1970s. So that it means it's the original lineup for the entire time. It's Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, we've got Tony Iommi on guitar, we've got Geezer Butler on bass, and we've got Bill Ward on the drums. And in 1970, more specifically Friday the 13th of February, they give us this, Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath. What do I think of this album? Well, I like it. It's not my favourites by any stretch of the imagination. It's quite, compared to some of the later work they do, it's actually quite a weak record, and I'll explain why in a moment. But this is the album that is often considered the ground zero for heavy metal, this is the beginning. And so with it, you've got to take a bit of pinch of salt. Remember, this is 1970, and this is a band that hasn't got a bit of a back catalogue. So when you compare it to, Deep Purple and Rock comes out this year. Deep Purple have pointed out a few albums. Led Zeppelin 3, I think, comes out in 1970 from memory. If you listen to the production values on those two records, it's much higher than what you get on this album. This album definitely does sound like we recorded this in a couple of days, and the sound of it is I recorded this in a couple of days. But these are songs that they've been on their repertoire for quite a while. They've been a band for a couple of years at this point, and have been sort of figuring out what kind of sound they want to go for. What were my thoughts on this album overall though? I mean, the song Black Sabbath is a really good tune. Behind the Wall with Sleep and NIB, some great riffs, and it's really enjoyable for me as a guitar player to play along to. Their songs, all 3 of those have been staples for the set list pretty much since the Ozzy reunion era. They've floated quite a fair bit through other periods of the band's career and history. The rest of the album though, I mean, The Wizard's pretty cool, the Warning is okay, but the rest of the album doesn't really do anything for me. Overall though, I give it a 7 out of 10, because objectively, obviously it's a very important album. It's an album that still is actually very good, but it's just one that doesn't really gel with me as much as some of the others. So 7 out of 10 therefore on the debut album, pretty damn good. Later that year, 1970, they actually come out with perhaps the most important album in their catalogue, and that is Paranoid. Paranoid is an album that helps sort of solidify what heavy metal is. It's an album with some of the most recognisable heavy metal riffs ever. and it's got some of those rememberable riffs by Tony Iommi. You know, its only problem is that it's been overplayed, but there's a reason why stuff gets overplayed. It's because it's that important, or it's just that good, or it's just that accessible. And this album is all three. It's good, it's accessible, it's very important. You know, on this album alone, you've got War Pigs, which is one of the best album openers ever. In the way that riff comes in, it's a 7 minutes Leviathan of journey through various riffs, through incantations of the band. It's got a great message about the Vietnam War as well. It's an album that kind of gets overlooked when historians go back and look at the music of that period. You also got Iron Man, which is one of the sort of first 3 to 4 riffs you learn to guitar play, you know, alongside Smoke on the Water, Smells Like Teen Spirit if you're a millennial like myself. Or of course, you know, Another One Bites the Dust, or that's more for bass riff, but you know what I mean. But the rest of the album is just truly amazing. It's the biggest album, it's the most recognisable record. For me, this, objectively speaking, is an 8 out of 10. I don't listen to it as much as I should, but overall it's an amazing album, and it's one that I would give to anyone who says I want to get into Black Sabbath, where do I start? Because you've got all the important songs on here. We'll see most of them. So 8, maybe 8.5 out of 10 for importance, 8 out of 10 in terms of my my personal preference with this record overall. And Fairies Wear Boots is an amazing track to end an album. Moving forward, though, we go into 1971. The band at this point is detuning the guitar strings now down to C-sharp standard from standard tuning, so the free semitones lounge, and they end up releasing an album that has gone on to heavily influence stone rock, doom metal and sludge metal, all those kind of scenes from the late 90s, well, the late 80s rather into the 90s. That is called his Masters of Reality. This is quite possibly my favourite Black Sabbath album overall. At this point, the band is now experimenting a little bit more with different sounds, different sonifications, but more in that kind of big, fuzzy, thick guitar and bass kind of tones. On here, the songwriting has stepped up a little bit. You know, we've got Children of the Grave, which is one of the best Black Sabbath songs ever. You've got Into the Void, which is it's basically Riff City for a guitar player, because there's about 5 riffs jammed together and it flows so naturally. You've got another amazing album opener with Sweet Leaf, the way the coughing and then it comes into that really slamming riff. It really draws you in quite quickly. Overall, it's an album as well that for me it's very easy just to listen to, partly because it's just got this really nice kind of fluidity to it all. You know, the way they kind of start with Sweet Leaf right away through to Into the Void, it just flows naturally. You don't wait for the next track to come along, but at the same time it doesn't float into the background either. Overall, I would give this album a 9.5 out of 10. One of my favourite albums, one of my favourite Black Sabbath albums, and it's just an awesome record overall. Highly recommended. And that's something you will find, I would say, with the first 5 Black Sabbath albums. You are talking about the most important and quintessential records of the era in heavy metal music. They followed up Masters Reality with Black Sabbath Volume 4. With Ozzy Osbourne on the front, and on the CD version, certainly from 2004, Ozzy Osbourne on the back. Master Reality might be one of my favourite albums, but Snowblind, track 6 on here, is my favourite Black Sabbath song. The way that riff just comes straight in and hits you straight in the face, and the journey that riff goes on, that whole song goes on, is just incredible. And every single time I listen to it, it gives me the same vibe. I remember the first time I listened to it, it just kind of gravitated towards. The rest of the album is actually pretty good, to be fair. You know, you've got Wheels of Confusion, you've got Changes, the kind of doomy ballads, a little bit controversial. Some people love it, some people hate it. I quite like it, actually. You've got Supernauts, you've got Under the Sun on here, you've got Chronophaga as well, however pronounced that. Apologies, super fans of this album. Overall, I would definitely give this album a 7.5 out of 10. It's not one I come back to as much, but when I do enjoy listening to it. You know, around this point as well, Tony Iommi and the rest of the team are still very much heavily into drugs, take a lot more time to write their songs. I think cocaine's now really coming into the mix, but they're still hitting highs with their songwriting at this point. The rest of the band, if you watch the live tracks by them, they're still sounding amazing, they're still very tight, very much a machine and a gang of Brummies trying to make it big without selling out. But the riff master himself, Tony Iommi, hit a sort of writer's block before this album, 1973 Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath. Thankfully, though, he managed to get over it and gave us an amazing record to go back and listen to because, again, a fantastic opening with the title track, Sabotage. That riff when it comes in, it is just undeniable. Spiral Architects is a great song as well. Abracadabra and Killing Yourself to Live are an amazing sort of duo to go backwards and forth. National Acrobat is fantastic as well. The thing with this album as well, it's definitely the most progressive of all the original lineup albums. You know, you've got Rick Wakeman on the keyboards as well. The music is, and the songwriting is definitely a bit more intelligent, and you can see that they are now really firing on all four cylinders on this album. You know, alas, after this record came out, though, they had a bit of a harsh truth. They found that the record company was ripping them off. And they were somewhat signed into a contract they couldn't really get out of in the same way. But nevertheless, just before they went through the sort of leaner years, the original leaner years anyway, they managed to put out an amazing record that kind of tips off the original 5 Sabbath albums, which are often considered some of the most important albums ever made in the history of hard rock and heavy metal. Progressing beyond Sabbath, Black Sabbath, though, we get into a couple of albums that are not towards my favourites, but they do start off still with a pretty solid record, which is called Sabotage. Some people call this actually their favourite album, and I can kind of understand why. It's a very harsh sounding album. It's got a lot of very good, very memorable riffs on here. You've got Hole in the Sky, you've got Symptom of the Universe, the proto-thrash riff that, alongside perhaps Rapid Fire by Judas Priest and cover Motorhead. Albums definitely, you can see the influencing of thrash metal from the 80s and onward. Megalomania is a pretty good song as well. The thing for me is that it just doesn't do it for me. You know, it's just, I just don't connect with this album the same way I know some people do. It's not one of my favourites, but it's still a pretty solid album. I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. You know, because you got some very memorable riffs on here, but it's just ultimately not as strong. But it's still stronger than some of the other Sabbath albums that will come out after this as well. If this is your favourite album, more power to you, because I can totally understand why. It's definitely a bit more harsh, a bit more lean, a bit more of an aggressive tone. Definitely a bit of a backlash to how the record company at that point were treating Black Sabbath. They follow up though with 1976's Technical Ecstasy, which for me is just, it's not a good album. To get the rankings straight out of the way, it's a 4.5 out of 10. You know, it's not terrible, it's not unlistenable, but it's not a strong record for me. Dirty Women is actually a very good song though. It's alright with Bill Ward's vocals. It's a pretty decent track actually, you know, and it's nice to hear someone else sing for the band at this point without losing some of the tonal sounds that changes when you have a new singer. And Rock and Roll Doctor is pretty cool. This is not a particularly good album though overall. You know, Drugs at this point is very much involved in the band's life. They're very much taken over by that and then kind of not really working as strongly as they once did as a gang, as a group. You know, at this point, during this album, the next album, Ozzy quits and then comes back. You know, like I said, the record company is not treating them as they good. Punk happens as well, and you can see Black Sabbath feeling like these kind of old dinosaurs in the sort of hard rock and heavy metal kind of communities at this point. And also, this album cover still to this day, I still just find very weird. Like, you just don't really know what is going on. You can't even say it was a very 70s kind of album cover. It actually looks very 80s, you know, is that, you know, the robotic kind of thing. But yeah, ultimately not a particularly strong album. And they followed up with an equally not strong album, another 4.5 for me, which of course was Never Say Die. Actually one of my favourite album covers from the original lineup, to be fair. It's pretty cool. I don't know what it is, maybe it's just the blue. It's a nice contrast to some of the earlier album covers, you know, which are a bit more doom-laden, as it were. And actually the first 3 songs on here, Never Say Die, Johnny's Blade and Junior Eyes, actually are pretty decent, pretty cool tracks. Never Say Die actually was a top 10 hit, or say top 20 hit. The rest of the album though just falls very flat for me. You know, this is the last album of the original lineup and probably will be now to the end of time. You know, on this tour they brought Van Halen out, and Van Halen was sort of new kids on the block as they were, and they were sort of the next wave, and they sort of precursed what was to come from Los Angeles in the 80s. And obviously guitar techniques was about to take a giant leap forward with Eddie Van Halen. You know, the drink and the drugs sort of hit a sort of wall, as it were. They hit a wall with the drink and the drugs, and ultimately they just became this very dysfunctional band overall. So like I said, this is a 4.5 out of 10. 2, maybe 3 good songs, but the rest of the album's pretty weak. And that's it really. That's my thoughts then on the 70s Black Sabbath studio albums. You know, my next video will be the tracks from the 80s, because as we know, Black Sabbath did continue on after this. It wasn't they stopped and Ozzy Osbourne had a mega career and they brought the guys back. You know, they continued on with a few different incarnations. Thankfully it did, because the album that we're going to be talking about next at the beginning of the next video is possibly again one of my all-time favourite Black Sabbath and one of my all-time favourite albums. But stay tuned to see that. If you've enjoyed this, please once again give me a like, feel free to subscribe. I'm planning to do more of these as we go along, and also please feel free to give me some feedback on sort of how you found watching this video. Until next time, thank you.